Networking can feel like the worst thing. I don't know about you guys, but if I go to a networking event or if I have in the past, my hands can get sweaty. I can start to feel really reserved. I just kind of isolate myself. At least I haven't done that recently because I've started putting some strategies in place, but that's what I used to do. I, I'm very much a communication person. I like talking. But for some reason, if I went to like a networking event where like that was the job, I just would sort of shut down. So one of the things I do at networking events is I give myself a mental game of bingo, if you will. And I say, okay, and maybe I might write it down, but oftentimes I can do this now in my head. I'll think, okay, I want to find somebody with really cool shoes. I want to find somebody with who's from Texas, or I want to find somebody who also is from my state, that kind of thing. And then it forces me to start talking to people, and I'll even talk to them and say, hey, how are you? I see that you're here by yourself. I wonder, can I ask you where you're from? And then they'll usually say, well, I'm from Tennessee. Why? And I said, well, I'm playing this mental bingo game because I don't love starting conversations with people, but this is just something I do to help me get the conversation started. If I have found somebody who's by themselves, they're probably uncomfortable also. So it's a really good, safe place. And they can usually relate to that conversation and go, oh, okay, yeah, okay, that's a really good game. I want to play that too. And I have invited the people with me before to say, hey, all right. So we would talk a little bit about what kind of work we're looking for, or if we're working and how we might be able to connect. But then I will also maybe suggest, hey, do you want to go with me to find another person? Next on my list is somebody with some really cool shoes, and so on and so forth. And so that would be a really good strategy for networking. That's something I used at networking events. But today I also want to talk to you about 4 different strategies to employ when you're networking. Because sometimes you're not at a networking event. And when you're job searching, it's really easy to be in sort of a low vibration energy of like fear, how am I going to pay my bills, or shame. I'm the one who's, supposed to be paying bills for my family, but I'm not right now. All those natural emotions and thoughts come with being unemployed, let's say. So I want to give you again 4 tips. The first one that I want to give you is to start with people you know and ask for help. It's very uncomfortable. I have found in working with thousands of people over the years, men especially tell me they have a harder time asking for help. But when we sort of think about, okay, what are you looking for? What will it mean to you to be employed? How will it help you change your thoughts? Maybe you get rid of the fear, you get rid of the shame. And so it's worth at least being a little bit vulnerable. But you more than likely have people in your life. You have neighbors probably that you know, or let's say you go to church, or you're in a group like AA or something. If you're a college student and you're in online classes or in-person classes, you've got all those students. You can also take advantage of the community that we have here. You don't know each other, but you could get to where you start talking about who you know or what you have to offer, or if you're hiring or you know somebody who's hiring. And even though you don't know each other, you start listening to the movement, or watching the movement of what people are aware of in terms of jobs or who they know. Maybe that helps you. You just don't know. By putting yourself in a position to ask for help and talk to people you know, or at least are already connected to, you never know what can happen. But you got to be willing to be clear about what you're looking for and what you have to offer. I also recommend broadening your circle a little bit and starting to talk about what you're looking for with people you don't know. One way you can do this is by, if you're on LinkedIn and have a professional, solid profile. I wouldn't probably do this step if you don't have a polished profile yet. Start there. But let's say you do. You can start joining professional groups on LinkedIn. It doesn't cost you anything. And initially, what I would recommend is start watching the conversations, and then start liking or chiming in and adding comments on the conversations. And then when you feel ready, you can say, hey, group of my peers, I'm transitioning right now jobs, and I'm looking for this. I have 13 years of experience in this, and this is what I'm looking for. You have nothing to lose by doing that. Even if nobody likes or responds to it, there's something about putting what you need or what you want out in the universe. You're more likely to get it, right? If you're willing to communicate it. So LinkedIn groups is one way, or any sort of social networking groups. Another thing you can do is called informational interviewing. You can think about who's in your community. Again, like maybe I've already asked my neighbor. My neighbor doesn't know anybody hiring right now, but they know somebody who might know. I can call that person, or I can call someone in HR at a company, assuming I can find the number and they answer the phone. I can also reach out to people on LinkedIn and say, hey, I am changing fields. I'd love to see if I could have 15 to 30 minutes of your time. You'll have a better chance of getting a yes if you ask for a virtual meeting. Can I, for a virtual, not a virtual, but an informational interview? More often than not, they're going to say yes. However, you want to realize that that's not a request for a job interview. That's applicable when you really do want to ask some questions about the industry. So for example, you might say, well, I've been in IT for a number of years and now I'm transitioning into marketing. And I wonder if I can ask some questions about marketing that, maybe are a little bit harder to find online. And you start with the research that you have done, which is, well, I know that with marketing, there's these 3 softwares that tend to come up in all of the job postings. I wonder, would you mind taking a minute or two to tell me which do you use and which of those do you think is the best? Because as a job seeker, someone who's changing careers, if I want to move forward in that space, I really want to be able to focus my attention maybe on one software. So we want to show that we have done research, and we want to ask really targeted questions that in fact help us take the next steps in terms of either applying for jobs. Again, you're not using that as an opportunity to get a job. Now, you could have your resume with you, whether you meet in person or online, but it's fair to say, hey, if I were to show you this, I know that you're not hiring right now, but given that you are a hiring manager, would you be willing to take a look at my resume for just 5 minutes and tell me if there's anything that I could add or change that might make me a stronger candidate for a future opportunity? I'd probably save that towards the end of our meeting. But an informational interview goes a really long way, because you're likely, if you've got somebody in the field, they can answer questions, again, that you might not be able to find online. Maybe there's something that's so recent you otherwise would not be able to know the information they tell you. So I would ask for a meeting. If you get a meeting, again, be sure your questions are prepared. Be sure that you are super professional, of course, and appreciative of the person's time. And then I would also recommend sending a thank you email at the very least. So that's tip number 2. You can talk to people you don't know, again, using LinkedIn or maybe informational interviews. I should say LinkedIn groups. Number 3, once you start with these connections, whether you've gone to a networking event, you've asked your neighbors, or you have reached out to people you don't know, you want to be mindful of listening so that you're really listening to what they're saying. I was the director of career services many years ago, at my first full-time career services position, and my job was to help something like 700 students get jobs. And I felt very overwhelmed by that because it was during the time of the pandemic, and it was hard for anybody to get a job. So my strategy was to reach out to people I didn't know, which happened to be businesses, and I asked for meetings. And my tendency could have been, oh gosh, I really need to find jobs for students, and I could have situated my whole conversation around what I needed. Instead, what I did when I got a meeting with an employer, and I said, tell me about your company. Wow, that's really interesting. And I asked questions. How did you get to this place? How long have you been doing this? And then I also offered something. In listening to that person describe their company, if it made sense, I would say something like, well, I love that you guys volunteer in the community. I see that you're doing Habitat for Humanity. That's amazing. Hey, listen, I have 20 to 50 students here in this program, and I always encourage students to volunteer. Would it be helpful for you if I promoted that volunteer opportunity to you so that I bring you some volunteers? And every single time, the employers would say, yes, absolutely. What that does, number 1, I'm leading with a service or something to offer as opposed to asking for something. Number 2, by listening, we're building rapport. I have those relationships now, which is like 15 years later, from a lot of those people that I met because I really listened when they were talking. Those weren't informational interviews, right? Those were like networking meetings. Also, though, what happened was the 4th tip that I'm going to give you is stay connected with all of the connections that you meet. It's not enough to get people's LinkedIn profile or number or email. You want to also keep those conversations going as naturally as possible. So, for example, going back to some of these employers, I would say, hey, would you like some volunteers? Yes, awesome. Okay, well, when is your event? Great. And I was always promoting and still do promote volunteering as a great way to network. I would share that opportunity with students and say, hey, listen, if you can even spare 4 hours on this Saturday in 2 months, you're going to be with this attorney and other attorney related, legal folks. And even if you don't meet the attorney who's hiring, you're still now part of those people's network and you're on those people's radar. So why not go if you have the time? So I just find that anytime we lead with something to offer, we will always get more than we need. It may not happen right away, but your network will continue to expand. And at some point when you're job searching, it's going to become easier and easier because you will have that network existent for you. So again, recap. First, start with people you know and definitely ask for help. Number 2, start with people, then go to people you don't know and ask for help, but be proactive. Number 3, of those people you don't necessarily know, you can ask for informational interviews if they're in your industry. And number 4, again, stay connected with those people. And when you're connecting, make sure you're listening to what they have to say so that as you stay in touch with them, you're maintaining those conversations and they're genuine. They're not all about what can you get from those folks. So I hope this helps. Put in the comments below if you've had any experience trying any of these. I'd love to hear them. Also, if you have any questions, I'm happy to go through those as well. And last, if you have any ideas for future topics, please let me know. Thanks, everybody.